before my NDE, I was not thinking spiritual things at all. So it was one of the first things I learned when I met the Sufi Sheikh, and I do a very similar meditation to what he taught me still, and I've learned basically the same meditation from other people from different traditions. So it is probably the most important thing people can do. I would say that, and checking with other, with teachers or healers or things that you really trust to get an outside perspective. Even doing meditation, one of the pitfalls or whatever is like when you have a really nice experience spiritually and it feels really good in a certain way, you want to have that same experience. And then it's possible it gets to where you're almost making up that experience just because it was so nice. You want to remember to keep going and going. And a lot of times with that, it's good to get an outside perspective. Another downside thing is sometimes when you're going to a higher level, that part is kind of hard, and it's not like this pleasant feel-good thing. Like your emotions come up that are blocking you. Your mind comes in and almost tries to stop you, and you have to be very determined, really focused, and stick with it. Sometimes meditating, like yesterday, I did a good job, but I kept getting distracted. And I had to say to myself, no, keep your eyes closed, and sit there and be. And then at some point in what I do, this energy comes in and there's a sound with it, and then you can start to focus on that. And you almost have to add in with your imagination things you can see in your inner vision, because we're very visual people, and the visions we have from our daily life sometimes will distract us. So with the sound and the feeling of the energy is very strong, but our mind can get distracted. So I use, there are certain scenes I have of being in a mystical school with teachers that I've experienced, and I use my imagination to connect to those things, and then it just helps keep all of me in that direction. It's called the sound current. Really, it has some variations in there, but sometimes it's very loud and almost sounds like a siren. Sometimes it's softer and just almost sounds like a hum. Sometimes it even sounds almost like the rustle of the leaves when it's very soft. The part of it is generally we perceive the more positive things on the right side. So there are just some guidelines to help make sure you're tuning into positive things. Part of it is in the sound. What I do is I try to go into the center of the sound, and this energy comes in like you're describing. And sometimes it's really quite intense, and it takes a certain focus and commitment to stay in that. And when it's interesting, there's also the part where I'm always trying to, then I'll first connect to it outside of my body, and then I'm trying to open up in my third eye or my heart center to let it into my body more. And from day to day, there's different success with that. Sometimes it just comes in and my whole body becomes tingly right away. And usually that happens to a certain extent. Sometimes it's funny because sometimes I need to get a little distracted, like something out in the world will distract me. And then all of a sudden when I check back in, my whole body's filled with that energy. So there's a combination of choosing into that and allowing it, and realizing I don't really know how to do it, so my mind doesn't get in the way too much. It's an interesting balance how to do it. But yes, there's this very intense energy that sometimes I feel it. I'm 66, I have some aches and pains in my body. Sometimes it gets rid of those aches and pains. It's also that energy when I'm working on healing people, sometimes that's what I use. There's a few different types of energy. So the Kundalini energy would be more physical, and then, so I guess we could divide it into, there's physical, there's what be like a magnetic, and then there's the spiritual. So, and there are probably a lot of different cultures and, ways to look at it. But so there's also energy from the earth. Oh, as I was saying with that guy, there were 7 different energies that he could be open to. And I'm going to look into that a little more and try to develop that theory. But when I was working with him, that's the way I was seeing it. So what I try to do is bring in the purely spiritual energy to come in through the upper chakras. And so Kundalini comes from the bottom up. And they're just different types of energy. And I think it's best to try to utilize all of these, in a way of the part of our intention of doing good and doing no harm, to me, is just so important. Because it's very tempting, because some of these energies are so strong, like to let our resentment or our ego get involved. And we do need our ego, but it's just really important to keep our intention clear to do good. It's very important. There's so much, and it's I know there's part of when I'm meditating in the beginning, it's kind of dreamy and I'm seeing all these things, and I try not to try to figure out what it is, but I'm assuming they're from past lives and stuff clearing. And then sometimes there's these majestic visions that are otherworldly, and it's good. It's nice to have those things, because you get a nice experience, and it sort of validates the process in a really great way. Yes, I'm laughing because sometimes it is like that, and you have to almost push it to open up and practice. And we have so much stuff. I really like to connect into my heart center, but that's more of a feeling thing. And then in the third eye, it is definitely good to see things. And then when we're not connecting to it so much, it's like, oh, I want that. So you just have to be a little careful with that. Again, I think it's more like an intention that something miraculous will happen, without trying to keep it pinned down to us, what we experienced before. So it's more like, well, I want that and more. Leave it open to something even greater to happen. And I think that's very important. I work, a lot of times people come to me and they want to connect with past loved ones, and I can see they're just looking within a certain range, and that's why they're not seeing them. And sometimes I can get people to open up and do that, and sometimes I can just tell them what I see, and still they're very almost stubborn in a way. They just want to look at what something in their past has said, well, just look within this range. And I try to say, it is almost like, well, you're looking over to the left, and your loved one's over to the right. If you could just look there and feel it. I did have a nice thing happen a couple of weeks ago where someone did that, and their past loved one, well, it was actually their past loved one and an angel together reached and touched her heart, and she felt it. And he goes, whoa, I just felt something. And she said, that's almost kind of weird. I don't know what it is. And I tried to explain. So I'm good at talking people into how to open things up. I had a client, it's been a couple of years since I've actually talked to her, but almost like once a month for quite a long time, she would have a session with me. And I could tell she wasn't getting this like, aha, this feels so great, wonderful thing. And I even said to her, are you feeling what's going on? She goes, not really. And I even said, well, why are you talking to me? She goes, I just have a feeling it's a good thing. And I became determined right then to figure out her way of, usually I know intuitively how to talk to people, and it could have something to do with their religious or spiritual beliefs. In this woman's case, it actually had to do with quantum physics. And I like quantum physics, so that was not a problem for me, but it was interesting to see. And as soon as I figured out exactly the words to say to her, a lot of times what I know what's going on with the other person is it happens to me or in my area. So my room filled up with purple light, and she said, and I could see spiritually that her room filled up with purple light too, and she saw it. She goes, whoa, the purple light just came in, and it was really cool. I say, talk about that, because it seemed like that's what she needed to get from me, because then I didn't hear from her anymore after that. It was just a way for her to get to that place to see the spiritual stuff. So, in one way, quantum physics is is a scientific way of explaining how the universe is connected, and some of the spiritual principles that the spiritual experiences we have can be explained a lot in quantum physics, because it is explaining how the subatomic particles react. And they know in quantum physics that if humans are looking at something, they'll act differently than if we're not. And in one way, we can never really know, because we can only observe them through the way we're observing. In the way we do double-blind studies for medicine, because even if the person, for the control group and the group that's getting the medication, they don't know who's getting the medication and who doesn't. And they discovered even if the person giving them the medication knows, it affects the outcome. So they have to have a third person who tells this person, give this to this person. So our thinking and the way our energy affects what happens, they're trying to remove that as much as possible. So in quantum physics, that's what a lot of the experiments are about, is how to observe subatomic particles without human interfering with it, basically. So it's kind of cool. I don't remember the name of the book, but something that had a big effect on me was someone proposed, and I sort of agree. Some people don't, because I said, I don't know who, someone that I know who's very smart, actually an MD, I said, somehow the subatomic particles know that we're watching them. And she said, no, they don't know anything. And it might have just been a cute way to say that, how are we interfering with them? But I can't remember the name of the book, but it was something, it said, think about it, it's possible the subatomic particles are not moving unless we are observing them. And in one way, there's no way to know that, because no matter how, whatever fancy devices people come up with to try to observe the subatomic particles without our energy affecting them, we don't know, because we're observing them. And it was to me, wow, that is really a profound statement of how important it is to be clear inside of yourself and keep your intention clear towards loving in the best that you can. I mean, we're all people. I know I get angry sometimes, get sad, all these things, but always with the intention of moving into my loving, because it does affect the world and it affects people on that subatomic level.